Two, one. Welcome back to Walk with TFB. Tim Bryson here, and as y'all know, I'm a Black millennial who is eager to have unfiltered conversation with authentic people centered on international education, global sport, and Black culture. Today's podcast episode is one that has been in the making for a very, very long time. These two people in their university were represented in the 2024 Internationalization Athletics Summit. And as y'all saw on social, I got to visit this institution this past fall and learned a lot about not just their sport programs, but university culture and really their influence in global sport. But I'm going to stop talking and introduce my friends on the podcast. So without further ado, y'all help me welcome both Ben and Matt to our show. Ben and Matt, how y'all doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Tim. Absolute pleasure to be here. It's actually my podcast debut, so I'm excited.
Let's go. Let's go. Ben, how you feeling, bro?
You're making two podcast debutantes today, Tim, because it's my first one as well.
Oh, we're about to have fun. We're about to have a lot of fun.
You've got two debuts on the podcast today.
I love that. I was gonna wear my Arsenal jersey, but I didn't want to cause too much, strife.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
You can see the jerseys in the background vaguely.
I'll wear it next time we jump on our second show. But Ben and Matt, man, it's good to see y'all again, this time virtually, of course. We met virtually, got to see each other in person this past, I think it was October. And now I get to record this podcast episode, which is really focused on Loughborough sport, but also internationalization at Loughborough as well. So as you all know, but also as our listeners know, there's three parts to our podcast. The first is what's your story, second, trending topics, and then the third is how can we best support you. So I want to kick off segment one and just learning more about y'all's individual stories. So we'll start with Ben. So Ben, just tell us more about, who you are, how you got to Loughborough, and then more about your role at Loughborough University.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Tim. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast today. I first came to Loughborough almost 10 years ago now. I've been here for the best part of a decade. My accent is a little confusing because my accent doesn't actually portray the fact that I'm from Loughborough at all. I'm actually from Northern Ireland originally. So I came over to Loughborough as a student to do my bachelor's program in history, and then I stayed on to go on to staff, and I've worked across the institution in various departments. My current role, which I guess why I'm here today, is that I am in the global engagement team at Loughborough, so very much focused on helping to drive our international work within the recruitment side of things, focused on North America and Europe. So that includes quite a bit of student athlete recruitment, working alongside Matt and colleagues in Loughborough Sport. I guess the big reason I came to Loughborough originally was sport. Sport is what Loughborough is best known for in the UK and globally. I was a track and field athlete, came over to continue competing alongside my studies through my bachelor's studies. Didn't end up working out like that. I ended up a couple of injuries later and stepping back from track and field, but sport was a really big part of why I wanted to come to Loughborough and a big part of my student experience here as well.
Super dope. Appreciate you sharing that, Ben. Matt, how about you? What's your story?
Hi, so my name's Matt, originally from a city called Stoke-on-Trent, which is not actually too far from Loughborough. I think like many involved in the sports industry, my journey started as an athlete in a sport called badminton. So played badminton from a really young age. Actually was a student athlete at the University of Bath in the UK, where I studied coach education and sports development, alongside pretty much training full-time as a badminton athlete. Reached a pretty high level, roughly top 10 in England for doubles. I say top 10, probably the bottom end of that. I think my highest world ranking was in the top 150. So reached a pretty good level in my sport. I guess injuries caught up with me a little bit, struggled a little bit with finance during my career, and that kind of led me to get involved in coaching. So my coaching career kind of then started. I spent a couple of years out in New Zealand doing some development work, kind of raising awareness of badminton, also a lot of coaching out there. Also came back to the UK, spent 6 years as a national coach. So I was in charge of under 15 badminton for 6 years. From there, that unfortunately I got made redundant. So I ended up applying for a job at Loughborough as the badminton program coordinator, which kind of led me into my passion for recruitment. was heavily involved in bringing some new student athletes in. This then led to my current role, which I've been in for 12 months. So I'm now overseeing athletic recruitment at Loughborough and working very closely with Ben. So in a nutshell, my job is to support all our coaches, performance programs, athletic union clubs with their recruitment processes, as well as to interact with individual athletes and give them as much information as possible about the Loughborough offer.
Dope. So excited we're talking to y'all. I'm talking to y'all today. We're going to jump into segment 2, which is really just focused on Loughborough University and Loughborough sport. I want to come back to Ben for this first part of this question, and Matt, you're definitely going to have to jump in as well. So Ben, you mentioned global engagement. And again, I've tried to push the internationalization and sport conversation in the United States, which I think is incrementally growing, which is a positive thing. But from a Loughborough perspective, what makes Loughborough a destination of choice for talent across the world? I'm speaking to both the athlete side, but also the student side, understanding that Matt can, focus on athlete recruitment after you speak. But thinking about destination of choice, what makes Loughborough a destination?
I think that it's the combination of the academics along with the sport. We're quite unique in that we are the UK's leading sports university, the world's #1 university for sport-related subjects, and alongside that, having a very strong academic profile within the UK. We're consistently ranked in the top 10 universities in the UK, while also having that unique sporting ecosystem, which allows students to balance being an academic student and having their athletics alongside things. And that's a pretty unique thing that we can offer at Loughborough, certainly in the campus environment that we offer here, with one of the largest single-site campuses in the UK, having a number of national governing bodies on site for sport, and having that sporting ecosystem that we refer to is actually, sounds kind of cheesy, but it is true that it is a bit of an ecosystem here where everything functions together. The academics and the athletics run alongside one another in parallel. They don't clash, which I think is really nice for student athletes here. There's no clash between training times and class times, or game days, or Wednesday afternoons when there's no classes scheduled. So actually the student experience is incredible as a student athlete. But also just the reputation that Loughborough has built up for success and for excellence over a number of years, I think is what lends itself as the destination of choice for students from across the world who are interested in sport.
It's wild you say that, because I think when y'all first said that back in last April, I was like, okay, that sounds cute. It's dope. But then going there in October, I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it.
It's one of those things, isn't it? Like, my job is ultimately marketing. I work in the marketing department, and
Sure.
marketeers will tell you all sorts of things, and we will have all sorts of nice strap lines. But it's actually true in this case. Like the sporting ecosystem thing, you can vouch for it now, Tim, haven't seen it. And once you see it, I think the penny drops in a sense, and you really get what we mean by that.
It's good. So, Matt, I want you to focus on the athlete part of this, the global engagement piece, particularly speaking to what makes Loughborough sports stand out in this global sport landscape that is continuing to grow and really deepen across all areas of our world.
Yeah, I think I'd definitely echo some of the things that Ben said. We've got a pretty unique environment. We have university sport programs running alongside national programs on campus, which means we have full-time world-class athletes, lottery-funded athletes, training on campus with our student athletes, which is unique. As an example of that, as part of our cricket program, we've had some of the England cricketers training on campus. We have the National Centre based in Loughborough. And some of our bowlers got the opportunity to bowl against some of the England batsmen. And one of the England batsmen, he's an absolute legend, Joe Root, was so impressed with one of the bowlers that he got his phone number. And he eventually went on to play first-class cricket in England just because of that link. So I do think that the national governing body link is incredible. I also think our coaching staff and the practitioners that work with our student athletes, just the kind of breadth of support that we have, literally every kind of discipline that you can think of, from physio to nutrition to performance lifestyle to performance analysis, we have that support on campus. And all our practitioners as well tend to work really well together as a team. Lots of cross communication, challenge across staff members, and generally that just leads to improvements in performance, just the way that we work.
So both of y'all mentioned, of course, Loughborough's ranking both in the UK, but also in the world, obviously #1 sport university in the world. But a lot of folks will listen to this podcast episode and will see y'all's faces and hear y'all's voice. We'll still try to compare it to the NCAA model here in the United States for those who are based in the US. And so it's very easy to say, that, like, what do you mean, classes don't clash with practice, right? Because that's real in y'all's context, but in our US context, like, is that even possible? Is that feasible? And so we'd love for you, Matt, just explain more about like what is UK sport, right? Like, so for someone who has no clue like what books is, I'm using obviously acronyms that you may have to explain, but what is UK sport and like what makes it different from your own perspective from NCAA sport here in the United States?
I'm going to let you speak to this one, Max. You might have a bit more insight on the actual book side of things.
Yeah, sure. Just to give a bit of context on books, books is kind of the NCAA equivalent, I guess. I think it is very different in that it is not as commercial as the NCAA is in America. Having said that, it still is a very good level of university sport. The way the competition works, there's a number of sports. Many universities across the UK compete for points across all these sports, and they get totaled up at the end of the year. So this is a competition that Loughborough's won for 43 years, ever since the inception of the event. Which I always say it sounds easy for me to say that, and I've only been part of that for 6 years, but it is incredibly difficult competition. There's many other universities which are progressing and challenging. So for us, it's kind of about raising the bar within that competition. But I think in terms of comparison, it's quite difficult to compare the two models just because of the commercial aspect within the American system. You guys get thousands and thousands of spectators at events. We don't necessarily get that, but what we do have is a very high level of sport. And within books, it is very international. You'll go to some of the events and you'll see many different countries being represented, not just the UK.
That's good. So staying on this topic, because again, you mentioned, and it's all on Google and online, that Loughborough University is the #1 sport university in the world. But that's more than just competition. And so thinking about, of course, y'all are 43 years in a row is amazing, and should be 44 in this upcoming year. But Ben, I want to come back to you because I remember on that tour that we took across Loughborough's campus, you kept mentioning how sport is just integrated in everything that is happening at Loughborough. So can you speak to like sport research, sport science, sport, whatever else that you mentioned that I may forget right now, to help people understand that like it's literally integrated into the fabric of the institution? Maybe me speaking to the president or the chancellor as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So, like you said, it's integrated into the very fabric of what Loughborough University is in many respects. Our world-leading department here for academic study is the School of Sport, Exercise and Health Sciences, which houses the vast majority of our sports programs from an academic standpoint. Within that school, there's so much world-leading research going on that we couldn't possibly even start to kind of scratch the surface of it. But a lot of that is done in conjunction with those national governing bodies that Matt has touched on. So cricket is a prime example. One of our researchers is heavily involved in the research around fast bowling technique in cricket. Or for some of your US listeners, this could be a different language that we're speaking right now. One of the other things that Loughborough is heavily involved in, though, through our Sports Technology Institute, which may be more applicable to your US audience, is research in concussion and head injury. And we've done a lot of work, yes, in cricket, but also looking at other sports and how the research which has been done to focus on reduction of head contact in rugby and cricket can be applied to the likes of American football and the NFL. So we have Sports Technology Institute, our sports science department, and they work very closely together despite being on different ends of campus. So you'll have people who are involved in biomechanics research, also working in conjunction with people who are focused on research into sports turf and sports surfaces. And that research aspect is a huge part of what we do here. The key thing is that the research is readily available and able to be used in a practical way as well. So a lot of the research is done in conjunction with industry, particularly through the Sports Tech Institute, partners in Adidas, Ping Golf, FIFA, a number of the major sports organizations, which will trip off the tongue for all of your listeners, are linked with Loughborough and will have research being done here.
Wow. Matt, are these things that you're mentioning in this athlete recruitment process that you're educating coaches to, find the best talent around the world? Like, how are you communicating what's happening on the research and academic side to, potential talent that may want to come to compete at Loughborough?
Yeah, I think it's a really kind of interesting area. And one of the kind of key things that we have in Loughborough Sport, we almost get to dictate some of the research areas. So if there's an area that a particular sport or program is interested to know more about, we can kind of submit that as a proposal. And then, for example, some of our PhD students can choose that as a research topic for their thesis. So I think that's kind of a really valuable area. Just to add to what Ben was saying, in terms of sports technology, we have worked with many leading brands in the sports industry. Adidas, Nike, Puma have all developed products with us on campus, footwear. I know one of the balls for the European Championships, World Cups have been developed on campus. So yeah, just the kind of breadth of links that are available kind of in those fields of research and technology is vast and can really benefit anyone who chooses to study at the university.
So anyone listening now the last 17 or so minutes, if they have not already Googled Loughborough University, Loughborough Sport, they would have. It's pretty a no-brainer in regards to why someone would want to attend as a student, and let alone a student athlete at Loughborough. But I'm curious to learn more about, what questions are athletes and even students asking Ben in regards to Loughborough University, whether it be about funding, academic study, student life, what types of questions, thematic questions are you all receiving as you're, engaging with talent around the world? We can start with Ben with this one.
I mean, the first question that I get asked whenever I'm in the US is, how do you say the name of this place? Because it's not an easy place to say the name of whenever you look at it on a piece of paper. So we don't help ourselves in that respect. But once we get over that initial hurdle, and kind of over the basics of where we are, etc., the big questions are around ironing out some of those things that aren't familiar to the US audience. Things like significant differences in funding opportunities is the obvious one. The scholarships seen between the US and the UK is really incomparable. We don't have the same value of scholarships in the UK for the majority of student athletes. However, that being said, then we do offer a 1-year master's program in the UK, which is a significant difference. Also helps with the cost of study as well. But then also just trying to iron out some of those things like, well, will my classes and my athletics clash? What's the coach-athlete relationship like here in the UK? What's the level of competition like, particularly in some of those American sports like lacrosse, American football, volleyball? They're the most common questions, because a lot of the student athletes that I'm interacting with, and I imagine it's the same for Matt, is that this is really their first interaction with the opportunity to study outside of the US. It's not Loughborough specific necessarily in the first instance. We're looking at the differences between studying in the UK and studying in the US as a student athlete, and what that looks like day to day from a very practical perspective.
It's a good point, Matt. What questions are you are you receiving as you're talking to athletes?
Yeah, I'd say very similar to what Ben said there. Always there's questions about scholarships and funding. As Ben said, it's a little bit different to the US and some other places, but there is funding and scholarships available. I do get questions about the programs themselves, what they consist of, the support that's available for student athletes. Always there's quite a few questions about academic flexibility and how the university kind of helps with that process to combine study with training for high-level sport. That's a really common one. And of course, you get a few questions about the location and
Hmm.
what kind of amenities are available in the area and what the feels like on campus as well.
It's great stuff. Y'all are modest. Y'all are almost too modest and too humble in regards to the work that y'all are doing. So I'm gonna encourage, empower you all. Just take the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes. Like, what are some notable accomplishments that Loughborough Sport has had, either recently and or over time? I.e., 43 years. And I'll give y'all a what do you call it? Like easy layup, if you will. And Matt, I want you to talk about this hotel with the oxygen thing, whatever the thing was called. You know what I'm talking about. We can start there, but I want y'all to brag about like what y'all are actually doing at Loughborough. Because again, until someone actually goes and sees it themselves, they're like, okay, maybe. But y'all doing phenomenal work, and I want the people to hear about this. Well, let's start with the hotel, man. Please.
Okay, yeah, that wasn't a place I was going to start, but yeah, we can do that. Yeah, the Elite Athlete Centre and Hotel opened in 2018. It's unique because within the hotel, there's obviously normal hotel rooms, but there are 20 altitude rooms, which give you the facility to alter the oxygen level in the room, which replicates the conditions you would get at altitude. And to be honest, I'm not aware that that exists anywhere else, and is pretty incredible. And again, within that building, everything's kind of tailored. The restaurant on the ground floor, the menus are informed by nutritionists, so you're getting the correct balance of protein, carbohydrate, etc. And yeah, it's just a great facility to be able to host not only student athletes, staff on campus, but international students, training groups, national governing bodies. So yeah, it's pretty incredible. I think in terms of achievements, we obviously already mentioned the Bucks champions for 43 years, so I won't labour on that one, but that is something we are incredibly proud of and really fighting hard to continue. What I would say is I think we're really proud of our alumni and some of the achievements that they've had, particularly in the Olympic Games. Across many years, most recently in Paris, we have 35 medalists across the Paralympics and the Olympic Games, which again is pretty incredible. And not only that, it's also about students that have gone into other areas or athletes that have gone into other areas. Probably the best example of that, Sebastian Coe, who's one of our most famous alumni, who got an Olympic gold medalist, but gone on to be the chair of the organising committee for the London Olympics, the president of the IAAF. So we're not only proud of our sporting achievements, but what our students have achieved kind of outside of that as well.
Then what you got?
I think that for me, actually, it's less on the performance side. And the thing that strikes me every time that I hear the stat, and I can't recall just the amount, Matt will know it off the top of his head. Matt, what's the stat on the percentage of participation at Loughborough in sport across the campus?
You've caught me out there. I don't know the exact number, but yeah, it's a great figure. I think the one that I do have is we have the CVA, which is the Coach Volunteer Academy, which provides voluntary opportunities. And all our volunteers log their hours on a portal. And this last year, we had over 100,000 voluntary hours logged. And that comes from volunteer coaches, from our students, event support, student committees, so many different fields. But it just kind of shows what students are willing to give back. But as well, it gives them a great experience of gaining that work experience in a sporting environment. So yeah, that's probably your stat, Ben. Over 100,000 voluntary hours.
I think that it's that ethos, but also whatever the stat is, it's something ridiculous, the
Hmm.
number of students across the campus that are participating in sport in some form. And it's far above the sector average. Like the sector average might be like here, and Loughborough's is like here. It's just crazy. And I think that that's the thing that for me really tells you all you need to know about Loughborough as a university and a sporting institution is that it's not just concerned with those very, very high performing athletes. The student athletes that we interact with, some of them will be coming from D1 institutions where they're competing at the highest level. of college sport as well. But we have students coming from D3, club, NAIA, all sorts of institutions who just want the opportunity to continue playing a sport at some level while pursuing their academic study. And I think that the ethos of Loughborough is to include everyone, regardless of ability, in some format of sport, whether that's parasport, sport as we would think of it, in other facets, coaching and volunteering, as Matt's referred to. I just think that that's the thing that really actually makes me proud to talk about Loughborough sport whenever I'm talking about it to prospective students.
That's good. That's good. And Matt, I don't know if you can talk about this in depth right now, but are you able to give an overview in regards to the parasport program at Loughborough? 'Cause I do remember that was something that is not just important and integrated into the university as well, but it's also leading globally at the same time.
Yeah, sure. Parasport has been a big focus for us over the last kind of 5, 6 years. A few years back, we appointed a head of parasport to really drive this area forward. Originally, it was a guy called Nick Dype, who he's now with the British Paralympic Committee, and then Alistair Donaldson has since taken that on. In terms of parasport, we have 7 of our performance programs which have a parasport offer. And those athletes are fully integrated into the programs. So non-disabled athletes train alongside disabled athletes, which is fantastic. And just helps to create that kind of team environment and the inclusivity element. Our facilities as well are really accessible. If you go in our gym, for instance, all the weights are put at the appropriate height, so for wheelchair accessibility. And aside from elite sport and parasport, there's so many opportunities just to get involved. For example, like we've got so many opportunities to play wheelchair basketball, and anyone can get involved in wheelchair basketball. So yeah, it's really an area that is growing. And again, as Ben mentioned, it's across all levels of sport. So it's right down from recreational sport, if you just want to have a go for fun, right up to the very top where we've got athletes on the podium.
I love this. So we started high level, just learning more about Loughborough sport and Loughborough University. Got into some more the weeds, if you will, and learning more about Loughborough sport in particular. But now I want to take us into what it means to be a student at Loughborough. So I'm going to put myself in as a prospective college athlete, as I told y'all before. If I didn't already start this PhD, I would have been over in Loughborough for 3 years. But I'm thinking about athletes and even administrators who may want to introduce or who will introduce Loughborough sport as an option for those who are graduating and want to continue their competition career. And one of the questions I know that athletes will ask, especially as Ben mentioned a little bit earlier, is like, what is student life, right? Like, what do students do, at Loughborough outside of going to class and playing their sport? So can you just talk more about like what student life at Loughborough looks like for an international student in particular who decides to come over and play a sport?
Yeah, I guess I'll take this one since I've been there and done
Yeah.
that. I think that Loughborough is an awesome place to be a student, genuinely. Part of the reason I'm able to do this job is because I had such a good experience as a student here. That is largely because of the campus. Loughborough is a college town, so it's the sort of place where in the UK, some people won't have been to Loughborough, may not even have heard of Loughborough if they're not interested in sport or university, because it is a college town. Everything in the town revolves around the university and revolves around student life. So all of the bars and restaurants, all the shops in town offer student discount. It's all very much student oriented. That being said, it's not a big city, so it's not kind of like the center of the universe, but the campus offers so much stuff to do. Like there's 65 different sports on offer here at Loughborough. There's about 100 different student societies, which are kind of like interest groups or clubs for students who have common interests. Within the halls of residence, there's fundraising opportunities and charity things that you can get involved in. There's sport within halls of residence, and it's just somewhere where you make so many amazing memories. I think that that's the big thing that a lot of students leaving Loughborough will say is that their experience here really did shape them into the person that they are today. And that's one of the really rewarding things about talking to alumni, whether they were involved in sport or not at Loughborough, is that they all describe Loughborough as somewhere that really contributed to making them the person that they are today. I mean, day to day, it's largely what you would expect as a student. You got classes to go to, lectures, seminars, tutorials. You've got the fun stuff like sports training or game day to go to. There's a sports bar on campus where you sampled a pint, Tim.
I did.
Um,
Did.
there's all sorts to be involved in on campus. But then you've got the kind of day-to-day stuff of just living your regular life as well, where you're surrounded by your friends, you'll go out with them, go shopping in town, do all the kind of boring bits of life. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's just somewhere where you set up home. That was very much my experience. Like Loughborough became home pretty quickly for me, even though I was across the sea, away from family for the first time. It just becomes home pretty quickly.
That's love. And so one of the things I know in regards to NCAA athlete recruitment into books in particular is that obviously 1 year masters, but the opportunity to travel across Europe as well. But most people in the United States, when they think about England, they think about London, probably primarily first. And so either Ben or Matt, can you just talk more about the feasibility, not, well, I know because I was in London, but the feasibility of traveling across the UK, but also across Europe as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're 1 hour, 20 minutes from London by train. It's a direct train route into St Pancras Station, right in the very centre of London. And once you're in London, I mean, you can get around super easily because you got the tube and the underground to get around. If you want to go and explore Europe, we're about 15 minutes drive from East Midlands Airport here at Loughborough, which serves the rest of the UK and several European destinations as well. But if you do want to just get out and see different parts, so like you can do a day trip to Dublin, for example, over in Ireland, and get an early morning flight, spend the day in Dublin, get the late evening flight back, and it'll be easier doing that than getting to some parts of England by train.
Dang, it's 15 minutes to the airport?
Yeah, it's 15 minutes to the airport.
I did not
Yeah,
know that.
I
Wow.
love it, man. I get back to Belfast in about 45 minutes straight.
Dang. So then taking it more practical to the student athlete side, Matt, student athletes who want to be a Loughborough athlete, right? How do they get in touch with you all? Do y'all reach out to them? Like, what is that like? Walk us through that process for those who are interested in wanting to learn more about Loughborough sport, but also competing there as an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, my job and Ben's job is to interact with those athletes. So we are kind of really good points of contact for that. We have many video calls with athletes to tell them more about the offer, to answer any questions that they may have. We also do work with a few recruitment partners, and they also assist athletes with their applications. I think the application process is fairly straightforward. It does differ from undergrad to postgrad. So undergrad is through UCAS, which is a global system across the UK. And then the postgrad is through a Loughborough specific portal, which is online. And it's very easy to kind of navigate through that. But I think, yeah, the biggest recommendation is to get in touch with us, have conversation with us. If you're interested in a particular sport, we can also connect you with the relevant coach who can tell you a little bit more about the program and what that entails as well.
So for athletes who are interested in learning more about Loughborough, what advice would you give those athletes as they're reaching out? When should they reach out? Walk us like the timeline or when is best for that engagement to begin happening.
I think my advice would be to reach out as early as possible. Again, it depends what kind of course you're interested in. If it's undergraduate, then the UCAS deadline is in January. So I'd recommend kind of before that period. For masters, it is a little bit later, but I would still recommend getting in touch earlier in the year, just so you can get as much information as possible. And also, some of our courses do fill up quite quickly. I guess the key thing is do your research. There's so much available online as well in terms of videos, information. Some of the videos are really good in terms of bringing to life what we have to offer without actually being on campus. I mean, the ultimate is to visit campus, as you've done, Tim, but obviously that's not possible for every international student.
So as we round this out, a few more questions I want to make sure I ask you all so that we give you not just y'all flowers, but truly paint this beautiful picture of what Loughborough is and what it'll continue to be. But staying on this athlete piece, is, again, a lot of athletes are going to reach out to y'all both pre and post this episode. And one question I know that I like to ask is, what is one thing you want every prospective athlete to know about Loughborough sport that they may not find either in the website, brochure, social media, etc.? We can Ben and Matt, both of y'all can answer this question. Yeah.
This is a really unrealistic answer because you can't possibly do it, but I would love to package up what I've kind of described as the student experience and be able to give somebody a glimpse of what that really is like. And if we could find a way of marketing that, that'd be amazing, because it would make my life a lot easier. But that is the one thing, like speaking to current students or alumni of Loughborough really brings to life, I think, what the Loughborough experience is. You won't find it on a brochure, you won't find it online because you can't really do it like that. But getting a snapshot of what it's really like to be a student here, and really the life-changing thing that it is to come to Loughborough. I mean, for a lot of the students who are particularly come from the US, they'll come for a year and then return back to the US. Such an incredible opportunity to come to the UK, explore a bit of Europe while they're here, continue competing, and get a master's degree. I mean, whenever I put it like that, I'm like, why not come to Loughborough? It just seems like a no-brainer in many respects.
I agree. I agree. Matt, what you got? One thing that a prospective athlete may not find, website, brochure, social?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, yeah, online, you're obviously going to find all the credentials. I think probably the key thing for me is the people. And that's something that you can get told about, but you only really experience it when you're immersed in this environment. And what I mean by that is, first of all, everyone is so friendly, genuinely really nice people. But also it's full of people that want to improve and to support each other with their development. And I'd say generally there's the right level of challenge and support amongst kind of the staff at the university, and that all these things tend to filter down to our student athletes. As well, it's something we do look for when we recruit, is we're looking for people that are keen to develop. The staff at the university do genuinely care about the welfare of the student athletes. And from what I've seen of our coaches, they really do care about the athletes, about what happens on the pitch, but it's also about what happens off the pitch or off the court. And that's what I see. Yeah, so it's definitely the people.
That's love. As we think about what's been happening over the last several years with, as I would argue, an increase in internationalization across sport, both college and professional. I'm sure there have been some trends or some things y'all have recognized and or have named for yourselves at Loughborough, but also globally as well. So can I speak to like what trends or themes you are seeing, whether related to athlete recruitment, Matt, whether related to internationalization and conversations about internationalization, just related to books, like what are y'all seeing happening right now?
I think there's a growing awareness of the opportunities to go international with sport. I don't want to overstate that too much because I think there's a long way to go, like a really long way to go. But in terms of like the line of work that me and Matt are in terms of people within the US understanding the opportunities, being educated about the opportunities, and the work that you're doing, Tim, is such an integral part of that because you're on the ground and you're in the college athletic system, and doing that education piece really has been so important for us in the UK, helping people understand that there is life after your NCAA eligibility is up. You can continue to compete. Yes, the opportunity is a little further away, but it's an awesome opportunity. I think that that's the trend that we're seeing, and that is starting to spread throughout UK universities, but also throughout the US college system, is that people are kind of having an increased awareness of what is out there in the UK, but also across the world, because there's other opportunities in other countries for student athletes to go to potentially.
It's a very good point. It's a very, very good point. Matt, what you think? What are you seeing in your line of work?
Yeah, I think definitely seeing an upward curve and much greater awareness of the various opportunities which are available, not only at Loughborough, but also many other international institutions. I think just awareness of kind of the benefits, there's so many examples of student athletes that have gone to another country and have benefited in so many ways, developing confidence, communication skills, networking internationally, and the benefits that that brings. So I think it's almost a bit of a snowball effect. So we're seeing people do this very successfully, and hopefully that's going to lead to many, many more in the future. But I think at Loughborough, we're understanding that, our offer is not going to be right for everyone. But yeah, in terms of sport and academics, that's kind of where we're at. That's our focus. Yeah, and it's competitive. It's always competitive. So there's many options out there, which is why we're continually looking to raise awareness and raise the bar with what we're doing.
I mean, I'm glad both y'all mentioned increased awareness because one thing I'm excited about is both the men's FIFA Club World Cup this year, then men's World Cup next year, LA 28, Paralympics, Olympics. So a lot is happening in the United States. I think is going to help to increase global awareness in sport just in general. Asking you all across the pond, quite literally, are y'all seeing what's happening in the United States with these mega events being hosted here and thinking about ways to engage? Y'all don't have to say too much, but is that like top of mind or back of mind? Like, where's that at for y'all?
That's very much top of mind, Tim. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's an exciting time because 26 FIFA Men's World Cup, 28 LA Olympics, 2031, I think it is, the Rugby World Cup will go to the US for the first time. And the Women's Rugby World Cup will also be going out there. Women's Soccer World Cup will no doubt go there. So you've got a really huge decade of sport coming up. And I think the exciting thing for us over here is that a lot of these sports are traditional English sports, like the T20 Cricket World Cup being hosted out there in 2024, huge, and opening up the game to a whole new audience across the US. And I think that's only going to increase. And we're seeing the reverse happen as well. I mean, the NFL bringing games to London every season, bringing a game to Dublin this year as well, and stretching that out across the world. And it's an exciting time, I think, for sport, isn't it? Because we're seeing this kind of cross-pollination of traditional sports that were housed in one country now launching out across the globe. And we're seeing that kind of periphery through university sport as well here in the UK. Like lacrosse and American football are growing sports within the university scene.
I like how you said that traditional sport cross-pollination. That's writing that down. That's good stuff. One of the last questions I'm going to ask
I'm going to trademark that.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I got two more questions for y'all. The one question for both of y'all is, what are y'all most excited about looking at Loughborough University's future, next 365, 3 to 5 years? Like, what are y'all excited about looking ahead?
I think there's a huge opportunity around those events in the US, both for awareness of Loughborough, but also awareness of the UK. Primarily probably through our research, because a lot of our research will be utilized going into FIFA World Cup, Rugby World Cup, etc. But also just I think coming out of the pandemic, which we still are in many respects, there's a huge opportunity for that increased awareness just to really spike. I mean, we're seeing the end of the additional year of eligibility for NCAA athletes, which is keeping me and Matt busy with increased interest from the US. And that's really exciting for us because for 3 or 4 years, we'd really struggled and suffered with that. But that's a really exciting opportunity now for us to kind of really see student athletes and internationalization at Loughborough really taking off post-pandemic.
That's a great point. Think about that, man. What are you seeing? What are you excited about?
I think to the point that Ben made earlier, just on some of the less traditional sports, I'm quite excited about that opportunity in some of those sports like cricket, rugby, that you wouldn't expect from the US are really, really developing. So I think there's big opportunity there alongside some of the more traditional ones like your basketballs, track and field, swimming, etc. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to generally an increase in international student athletes coming into the university. Obviously, it is coming from a performance background. I'm excited to see kind of what level they can bring and how they can contribute to the success of the university. I generally think that Loughborough's in a position where that's kind of the next thing that we need to do now is is really conquer internationally and globally, because we've proven that on a UK basis. But yeah, now it's time to kind of go big and start to grow that international market even more. And I'm really excited to come out to the States. So yeah, we're visiting in February. We're coming out to Florida and North Carolina, South Carolina. So yeah, that's going to be cool. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm excited for y'all. I hope I can get over there. I know it's a long flight for me. It's probably longer for me to come over there than it is longer flight than for y'all. For me, it's like 4.5, 5 hours. I don't know what it's like from where y'all at. Last question: how can we best support you? How can Walk with TFB best support you? How can our podcast community, any listeners who are engaged with us today, how can we support you in y'all's work at Loughborough?
That education piece, I can't really overstate how important that is. Like I said, it's really exciting to see the takeoff in terms of interest, in terms of the awareness of the opportunities in the UK and at Loughborough specifically. But there's a long, long way to go. I mean, the number of universities and colleges that we can hit to talk to um, athlete advisors, to student athletic association committees, to students directly, the number of colleges we can hit to do all of that activity is minimal compared to what people on the ground can do within their networks. So having advocates like yourself, Tim, for internationalization is fantastic for us because you do work that we couldn't even start to do in many respects by being there on the ground and just advocating for students to take the opportunities that are available for them. I mean, there's no better time in life to go abroad, live somewhere new with all the support you will get at a university in the UK than when you're a student. That is the time to take the opportunity and to make the most of it. So yeah, of course, it benefits us as an institution, it benefits Loughborough Sport, but actually it benefits students at the end of the day. And that's what we really want to have is students who are making use of the opportunities available to them to develop them as people and as athletes, to then stay in the UK, go elsewhere in the world, internationalize, is that a word? I'll trademark that as well, internationalize themselves further, or return to the US after they finish their studies here. But really, anyone listening who's involved in college athletics in any way, just get in touch with me and Matt if you want to learn more, but also just educating your students that there is opportunities out there for them and people who really do want to help. As Matt said, like all the coaches and support staff here really do care about the students and want to help them.
I love that. Matt, how can we best support you in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Same sort of thing. I think it's great that we've had the opportunity to get yourself on campus, to get many other people from various countries across the world. I think that's almost the most powerful way is to come and see what sort of environment we have here in Loughborough, and then to go and spread that word back in native countries. So yeah, largely it is just about generating that awareness and just making people aware that there is lots of support available from university in that process if that is something that does interest you. And I think this is very much, we want to attract students to Loughborough, but it works the other way around as well. You know, if we've got students at the university that would really benefit from going out to the States or going out to a European country, we want to encourage that as well, because that could be absolutely perfect for their sort of development. But yeah, we're so grateful for the support that you've given already. But yeah, let's get the word out even more.
Most definitely will. I'm going to put y'all's contact information in the description of this podcast episode on both YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. But Ben and Matt, first podcast episode done. How do y'all?
We do.
How do y'all feel? Y'all did great. Y'all did A+ or whatever the grading scale over is in the UK. But how do y'all feel?
You know what? It's for me. That's bucket list. Bucket list tick. Podcast.
Let's go. Ben, you feel good?
I'm going to go to the sports bar now and have a drink.
I was just about to say that I wish I was on campus to meet y'all there, man. It's good to see y'all virtually, of course. I hope to see y'all in the United States, but if not, we'll definitely see y'all in England here later this year.
Tim, it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. For everyone else,
Thanks
thank
so
you
much,
for
Tim.
appreciate you, Ben. For everyone else, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Walk with TFB. Again, please do not hesitate. Do not hesitate to reach out to both Ben and Matt to learn more about Loughborough University, Loughborough Sport, but also how athletes at your school, if not an athlete yourself, can participate over in the books at Loughborough University. I look forward to future conversations focused on international education and global sport here over the next several weeks. But as always, until then, walk with me.